to the Signature Required podcast. My name is Brittany Renee, and I am the founder of Signature Required. I am a serial entrepreneur, an author, and a mental health advocate. I have here my co-host, Miss Pariss.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pariss, and I work alongside Brittany with a few of her business endeavors. So I'm super excited to be here today and have this good conversation with you guys.
Yes. So let's dive right into it. Today we'll be talking about the power of your name and what is your purpose. So just understanding the power of your name and finding your purpose can be super difficult for people and different individuals, because when we're born, it's almost like, okay, what were we placed on earth to do for?
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think that it takes a lot of self-care, a lot of time to understand who you are.
Absolutely.
And then in that, you're like always evolving, right? So let's get some questions answered.
Let's do it.
Pariss, how did you discover your purpose, or what is your purpose? Let's talk a little bit about that.
I think discovering my purpose, like you said, was more so just this evolution of life, maneuvering through certain situations, experiencing things, not experiencing things, to kind of ground myself in what makes me happy, what makes me feel good, what is something when I wake up in the morning, the idea of it, or whatever just kind of pushes me and makes me happy. And I feel like that's what grounds a purpose for an individual. My background is really different, right?
Okay.
And I think that going through a lot of the things that I went through as a kid kind of formulated as an adult what my true purpose is, and that's to help improve the lives of the youth, those that are around me, those that are in the same community as me, maybe even those that are not, you know what I mean? But just, it fills me with joy and fulfillment to be able to step into my community and provide a gap in between a kiddo's life that maybe has or doesn't have what is needed for them to be able to push themselves to their best self. So helping others is definitely my purpose for sure.
Absolutely. And I have had the privilege to work alongside of you, so I see your work ethic, I see your day-to-day, I see your passion behind your purpose. But if you don't mind me asking to just go a little bit deeper and to share, a little bit more, like you said, with the kiddos and your background, and really what makes your purpose even more powerful, and to walk in that. So if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Prepare you guys yourselves, listeners. It's about to get deep. Okay. She said dive in. We're diving.
Diving.
Okay.
Yes.
I come from a background where my family is originally from South Bend, Indiana.
Okay.
It is a makeup of from my generation, a good 60 to 70 individuals. 40 of those individuals have all been to prison for molestation, rape, or armed robbery, attempted armed robbery, things like that. So pretty severe kind of crimes. Those choices that they made, of course, trickled down on our generation as kids. So myself, my biological mother, aunts, grandmother, all experienced sexual trauma and physical abuse pretty heavily as kids. My grandmother's first son was actually her father's son. Wow. So that's kind of giving a little snippet into that. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I grew up in foster care, in and out of the system, in and out of detention. I was pretty much looked at as a kid that was a throwaway, really wasn't worth the energy for people. So even some of these talents and things that you're able to see with our work relationship and personal relationship, it wasn't necessarily nourished as a kid. It wasn't something that people took an interest in promoting me to be my best self. It was kind of like, this is where you come from, this is what you're gonna be. So that understanding and experience in foster care, in group homes, in detention, when I look at a kiddo that comes from similar backgrounds, it's very easy for me to see why a teen being DCS case managers, high needs case managers, therapists, whatever, it's super easy for me to see why they deem that kid as a throwaway. My purpose is to kind of step in and provide a clear understanding of how trauma affects everyday behaviors for everyone.
Absolutely.
And even more so for a kid that doesn't know how to process why they're here, why their parents are not, why they're experiencing simple things like I want these pair of Jordans.
Right.
But that's an unobtainable goal for that kiddo because of where they are.
Right.
I like to step in and just kind of bridge that gap, and definitely that childhood, that upbringing, that lack thereof for me is what stemmed that. I lost my mother recently last year, November, which you were extremely 1,000% there for me, and I couldn't have gotten through that time without you 100%. But just experiencing a 58-year-old woman that has started using crack cocaine and heroin when she could get it at the age of 12 all the way to 58. Her passing was a direct result of having an overdose on fentanyl, and it caused her to have multiple strokes. She lost a lot of usage in organs that she needed, and that was the end of that. Experiencing that and not having her for a majority of my life, not really developing a relationship with my biological mother until I was like 24, 25. It was super, it was a revelation, for lack of a better word. Just kind of understanding that cycle. You move through life and you kind of have anger, frustration,
Right.
you know what I mean? And just a lack of understanding as to why would you do this to your kid, you know?
Right.
But seeing her on that bed and living in the environment that she lived in for those set days, it became really clear to me that this is a cycle. And if we don't tap in as a community and help where we can, we will continue to perpetuate this negative cycle.
Right.
But if I can explain my story, my growth, my forward momentum to a kiddo and provide some understanding so that they can kind of get it in their head, well, yeah, a lot of people go through this and I can maneuver through this if I just focus on what means the most to me. What is my purpose?
I love that. I love it. I don't think that I could have ever got a better explanation. But even with that, right, I heard you say, DCS workers, and then sometimes these kids are just kind of feeling thrown away. What was that pivotal moment for yourself, for you, saying that you have been in and out of, detention facilities, and for you to just kind of get that aha moment that you can be everything that you are now? What was that pivotal moment for you?
That was definitely well into my 20s. I carried the baggage of feeling thrown away for a long time. I think that feeling, that lack thereof, plus puberty was a really awkward combination. So I moved forward in my early 20s being very angry,
Right.
you know what I mean? Very frustrated, kind of like me against the world type scenario. So it was well into my 20s. I had my daughter at 21. I would say about 24. Once I started seeing how my anger and my trauma, even though she had never experienced even a fraction of what I went through,
Right.
it still was showing up in a negative way for this precious baby. And it was like, wait a minute, here's that cycle again.
Right.
Are you gonna acknowledge that there's a disconnect when it comes to your daughter and just keep going through it as if you didn't know? Or are you gonna acknowledge and make the proper steps to change your energy, change your outlook, change your perception, and move forward, giving her the proper tools that she needs to be a better individual? And so it was motherhood for me that kind of made it that aha moment. Okay,
Right.
you are not where you come from. Yes, those people may have chose to throw you away, but you can choose yourself every single day. And if you're making the choice to love you genuinely, support you 100%, believe in you 1,000%, really doesn't matter who does it. And it sucks, but that rolls down to parents included.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Which brings me to, like you mentioned, identity, right? And so I had my aha moment.
Okay.
After going through my divorce at 22, being fully divorced at 23,
Yeah.
and just really taking that time to self-reflect when I did a lot of journaling, going through depression and feeling alone and isolated and by myself. And so what I did was I just kind of picked up really bad habits to try to protect myself, right? And so I felt like, well, if this person can do this to me, then I can do that to everyone else. And so it really was self-harming to myself. And so when I got into a very dark place and had that moment where I had suicidal ideations and I felt like I didn't want to live anymore, I had to pull myself out of that to figure out what was that root, right?
Absolutely.
And that's when I started to figure out my identity and to be reminded of what my purpose was, and that is to help young women and to give back hope to the hopeless, right? And so in our identity, like you mentioned, we aren't the same people that we are a year from now or 5 years from now, right? Your 23-year-old self is not your 35-year-old self, because we do so much evolving,
Absolutely.
right? And so some of the things that you shared, you know, and I'm not a mom yet, and so I often hear that motherhood is equated with having those pivotal moments,
Absolutely.
right? Like it grows you up, and although there are some others who don't grow up,
Very true.
right?
Very true.
But because of the trauma and the scars that they have, you know, sometimes it's hard to find, you know, your identity or your purpose, or even feeling like you have a purpose.
It's super difficult for certain people to rebuild in disaster, you know, and we can even look at that in like Katrina and different. It's certain areas of New Orleans that is flourishing and that have rebuilt through that. What, years ago, 15 years ago, something like that, long time ago, right? And then there's other communities that still look like Katrina was yesterday, you know. So I think for us as human beings, some people find it difficult to build through disaster.
Yes.
It happens. Those pivotal moments are disastrous. They feel ground moving.
Yes.
You know, it changes. Sometimes it even changes your appetite, changes your taste buds. I used to like this, I don't like this no more. You know, it changes you. And if you don't know how to look at that rubble and say, I can rebuild from this, I can come out from this clean and even better than I was. Some people like to live in that, and that's what makes them, like you were speaking into parenting and motherhood, and how some people don't. They kind of stay where it's ground moving.
Absolutely.
It's a big thing.
Absolutely.
Being a mother changes a lot, and if you're not able to say, okay, I see this new version of myself, and this is what I need to do to get closer to that version of myself, they kind of stay.
Right.
You know, which sucks. You know, because that's what builds character, what builds purpose, what builds that full understanding of who am I. You know, I'm a mother today, but you know, I'm a mother with a toddler today. In some years, I'm gonna be a mother with a high school student.
Yes.
Then I'm gonna be a mother with a grandbaby.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you have to be able to kind of move through those different things and be able to firmly plant yourself in the new version of yourself at every turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned of just rebuilding in disaster, right? And so writing that book, Putting on Face, I learned that my pain had a purpose, right? And that's a hard thing to grasp.
Very true.
Right? Because like you said,
in the moment, yes,
ground shaking, you know, you like, what am I going through? What did I do?
What is happening?
What is happening,
Yes.
right? But because I went through those situations, I have been able to help so many, right? And just really accepting that, and really just being spiritually grounded, right? And going back to my safe place, right?
Absolutely.
Learning that this pain has a purpose, and I may be that light for someone who has no light at all.
Absolutely.
And so that is something that really just pushes me to continue to walk in my purpose.
Absolutely.
Because the load gets heavy sometimes, right? And many are called and few are chosen, and I know that, and I know that I'm chosen.
Absolutely.
So sometimes as that cross gets heavy, right, you just have to remember to keep walking in your purpose, because
Absolutely.
there's a reason.
Information is going to be provided. You guys have to go get Brittany's book, okay? It is necessary. It is definitely one of the reads where you can see yourself in every single turn. There's going to be multiple scenarios and situations in that book that will resonate to you in your everyday life. So I would highly suggest you guys go and grab the book, okay? Grab it. Super phenomenal book. Super phenomenal.
And, you know, just talking about your purpose. So your purpose and your identity, right, goes hand in hand. Like, who are you?
Absolutely.
Like, what are you here for?
Yeah.
I definitely know that there's power in your name, and there's power in your name on every level, right? And what you do to secure yourself, whether it is in your career or whether it's just walking in your purpose, your name has power.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of dive into that. Like, your name has a lot of power.
Yeah.
And I knew that when you walked into my office, right? Because the girl's eyes lit up and my staff ran back to me and they're like, I don't know who this girl is, but she is phenomenal. She works great, right?
It.
And so that's the power of your name,
Absolutely.
right? And what your name stands for, who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people hear your name, it has power.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, you know, in certain instances, it could be a negative power, it could be a positive power. You know, we hear Jeffrey Dahmer, well, you know, there's power there, but it's not necessarily the power we are attracted to.
Right.
I learned early on, especially working in Atlanta in entertainment, that your name is important.
Absolutely.
Okay, it is as important as integrity, it's as important as work ethic, all of that ties in. So when you're, especially moving like you, entrepreneurial and businesses, it's very important for you to understand that when you put your name on something, to be clear what you're bringing to the table, be clear on who you are. And I a lot like to tie my work ethic to my name.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because I'm going to put the energy that I need to put forward to make sure that something can, or whatever's on my plate is going to get accomplished to the best of my ability.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a little bit more of a struggle than the aha moment of, okay, what do I need to change? What is my purpose? That was easy. It was motherhood, you know. Understanding the power of my name took a while.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it was something that I kind of jumped on and then jumped off of,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Not understanding who my biological parents are, where my name even came from, who gave it to me, you know, whatever.
Right.
Those were little nuances that kind of showed up as roadblocks into understanding it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Your name is who you are right now in this moment.
Right.
It's not who you were. And that resonated to me a little bit more when it came to my nickname.
Mm-hmm.
And back in Indiana, they'll call me something else, you know. But my name is Pariss.
Right.
But you know, all families have nicknames,
Right.
you know, things like that. So that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe that was the version of me that was there and experiencing trauma and going through those things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not me anymore. And that's the person that's going to hold that confusion on where do I come from and who are these people. I'm not going to associate that with understanding that my name has power.
Right.
I'm not going to associate that. So
Right.
when I kind of resonated more on that you hold the power of your name, you choose.
Mm-hmm.
You get to make that everyday choice to put forth positive energy, light, and love behind everything that you do to make sure that your name holds the weight that it needs to hold, you know.
Absolutely.
So that resignation was a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more different for sure.
Got it.
Yeah.
You touched on one of our core values of signature required,
Mhm.
right? And so just that whole identity and tying your name to something, right? And you also touched on relationships with work, and you know, you tie your work ethic to your name, right?
Absolutely.
That is just so important
It
because
really is.
what we tie our name to can dictate so much of our future and
Mhm.
so much of our choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that with Signature Required and creating this awareness of the power of your name and what you tie your name to when it's all said and done, you know, we often hear that they are worth more dead than alive.
Absolutely.
But because of the power of
Of
their
the
name,
name. Mhm.
right? And so just wearing your name proud, whether it was your birth name or whether
Absolutely.
it is what you answer to or,
Absolutely.
you know, what have you, your name has power. You
Mhm.
know, our last name is big back home where I'm from.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, talking and to different people, and we go to different places, and it's like, okay, we can't go anywhere with my dad because we know we're going to get stopped all 5-6 times
Right.
when we go into public places,
Right.
right? But just the power of his name, because he was a great athlete,
Mhm.
and he walks in integrity,
Absolutely.
and a lot of people love him, right? And just the power of your name, and it's almost like when you have a great example, right, to follow in the path or in the steps of.
That's my question for you. Yeah.
Has
that affected that? Being able, I've had the pleasure of meeting your father multiple times, and he is a room changer. You know, there's not an environment that he's going to come into and not add value. You know, he is going to add value everywhere. If it's the gas station,
right,
he's adding value to that gas station for that moment, for sure.
Yes.
Being able to have that, me coming from a situation where I didn't have a clear understanding or a clear, maybe a guide on how that looks.
Right.
Being able to have two solid individuals that were wonderful and like you said, walking in integrity and in purpose, and you know, just positive people, pillars in community and personally. Was that helpful for you on this journey?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. And something that I do not take for granted, right? Because I often come across different people in different walks of life, and hearing them, you know, I didn't have this, or I didn't have that, or I didn't have the help, right?
Right.
And there has been so many different situations that I have been in where I said my last name, and it was like, oh, it's such and such and such and such and such and such, and I'm like, yeah, that's my dad, that's my aunt, that's my uncle, that, you know, or even walking into a room or everything is sold out, and saying, oh, my name is such and such, and so and so is my dad, and, or so and so is my uncle. Oh, don't worry about it, I'll be back, I'll make sure that you're taken care of, right? And knowing the power of your name, but like you said, it has been to my benefit, right? But again, that's also given me just the gems and jewels that I need to continue to build relationships that I have, to continue to walk in integrity, to continue to be very aware of what I tie my name to, and I don't always get it right. I would definitely put that disclaimer out there. However, it's just so important to know, you know, the power of your name. I remember going to the fair like years in a row, and there was a guy I went with, one of my dad's good friends, who I call an uncle, Henry Eller. And so I went to the concert with them. But there's a concert at the fair every year, and he said, oh, I know this guy named Big Bob or something like that. And literally, when he told the man the name, that he was like, okay, VIP, blah, blah, blah. So, me being me, my uncle wasn't there the next year. But I'm like, oh, is Big Bob here? And they're like, oh, let me go get him. And literally, probably for like 5 years, every time I went, I didn't call him, I didn't have his phone number.
Just Big Bob.
Big Bob set me a VIP or had me backstage with whomever.
Yeah.
And the power of your name, right?
Yeah,
you say a name and things happen. So just making sure that you continue to build those relationships and walk in integrity, like you mentioned, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer, not the best feeling that you get when you hear that name, right? So making sure that we leave a lasting impression on people is everything, and making sure that we just be who we want someone to be to us.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to understand, like for me, my scenario is totally different. I come from a family of career criminals and, you know, just not good people. So when I'm in the city and I say a name, or I could even be in Atlanta and say a name of a cousin, and it goes left, or I might have to get into a physical altercation. They done stole somebody's money in now because I'm their cousin. They want me to accommodate for this crime that was committed against them type thing. But the thing that we need to understand as a community is to not allow that to stop us. Going back to what you said, is being what we want, right? Because we can change that narrative and we can take that power back, even coming from a family that doesn't respect or understand that whole notion. You can change it back. I'm doing that now.
Yes,
my daughter will have a clear understanding of her purpose, her power, you know, and that's because I've guided her in that. But I wasn't given that same luxury, and that's okay. Just understanding we can take that power back and we can change the narrative for our community, for our kids, so that we make it all make sense.
I love that. I love it so much. And just kind of piggybacking, you know, like off of what you just said, and teaching her and guiding her and breaking those generational curses, right? That your daughter's name has power. But like I said, your name has power, and you have built that, right?
Absolutely.
And in this short amount of years on earth, and just the interaction that I had, that brief interaction that I had, you made a lasting impression on myself, right? And so just knowing that you can make U-turns, right? It's okay to make U-turns. It's okay to come from a broken family who you may not have the luxury of having that last name in a good light, right? But just making those U-turns and making those necessary adjustments and making those mind shifts to know that your name has power and to always walk in integrity and to walk upright, right? And your signature is required.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
on everything. Absolutely. I definitely agree. I think that U-turn statement is one that's needed for a lot of people to hear. It's okay. It's okay to even have those bumps in the roads where you may have made a mistake and maybe you're not living in the best light of yourself, but to acknowledge it, right? And then to move forward, not making that decision again, that shows that growth. And now you move forward to just understanding what's best for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I also want to touch on is, having businesses, right? So being in business and hearing what Brittany said, and then things happen.
Yes.
Right?
I've lived that. I've lived that. Yes.
Right? Knowing that your name has that much power, although Brittany did not say
that,
right?
But
Brittany heard after something had to be done.
Yes.
When I said, Brittany said, it happened.
Absolutely.
Right? So just even that type of power,
absolutely,
right? And just making sure, and it's not like being on a high horse or anything to that matter, but just knowing, it's okay to evolve, and absolutely, it's okay to even adjust your name, right? Sometimes we have to adjust our crown,
absolutely,
right? And that all falls in alignment with our name. And
understanding that, it's the same way in a house. Mommy said, get up and, understanding that there's power in it, and it doesn't just sector itself to one part of your life. It's across the board. And if you understand that power, you understand signature is required, you understand that there's purpose, that power can't be taken. That's all for you. You can have that for forever.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready to close out our first podcast of Signature Required. I would like Pariss to tell our audience what you have going on in business, any websites or anything that they can go to.
Definitely, we are moving forward. We have done our grand opening for our medical apparel company, which is uniscrubsllc.com, uniscrubsllc.com. I would love for everybody to go check it out. Definitely put some things in the cart, hit the checkout, payment, all that stuff is fun, okay? We need that. Definitely moving forward, me and Brittany are still moving forward with improving the lives of these youth and establishing our nonprofits and creating these safe spaces for these young kiddos to be able to come in and get entrepreneurial education, as well as mental and behavioral health support for the things that they're going through. So we will definitely keep you guys abreast and updated on those moves for sure. Outside of that, I'm graduating a senior this year, so y'all pray for me. Pray for me. She will be going to the Fashion Institute in LA. Again, pray for me, okay? She is driving. I need the prayers, okay? I need somebody to put together a Pariss prayer group,
Yes.
But that's what I'm doing right now, is just trying to push this kiddo to be the best version of herself, outside of business. That's what I got.
So, Signature Required, this is our first episode. You can go check out the merch at signaturerequired.com. We have so many great things ahead. Healing Matters Most nonprofit will be up and running soon. Pariss covered a lot of those things that we will be helping with. And I just look forward to growing, this podcast and having guests here to come and just share their stories and the power of their name and to wear their name proud. So,
absolutely.
Share, like, subscribe.
All together.
Yes, and stay tuned for the next episode.